Welcome to the Building Doors Podcast, where we're not just pushing for opportunities for women's voices to be heard, we're creating them. I'm Christy Harst, voiceover actor and creator of the Building Doors campaign. Join us as we amplify voices, break barriers, and build doors together. Welcome to the Building Doors Podcast. I'm your host, Christy Harst, and today we're talking with Peter Marciano, actor, director, teacher, and voice expert. A designated Linklater teacher trained in Shakespeare and voice, Peter has coached actors on Broadway, off-Broadway, and national tours. He's a certified speech practitioner, co-author of the upcoming Authentic Voice and Speech, and currently leads acting and voice programs at Pace University and the New York Film Academy, NYFA. When he's not shaping voices, he's in the Adirondacks or experimenting in the kitchen. Ooh, do tell. Welcome, Peter. Welcome.
Hello, Chrissy. How are you?
I'm good. So what do we experiment on in the kitchen?
You're not supposed to do this, but I experiment with baking because, cooking is like improv central. Baking is chemistry.
Yes.
But I'm like, what would another tablespoon of vanilla do to this? So what would a splash of cinnamon? My family is so sick of me putting cinnamon in things, which is hilarious. So that kind of stuff. I like breaking the rules.
Well, yeah, let's talk about breaking the rules, because just to give our viewers and listeners a little backstory. So you and I met because of Tina Zaremba. Tina Zaremba is a fellow voice actor, a dear friend of mine. Also, she teaches with you at NYFA.
Yeah.
And so she reached out to me and said, you have to meet Peter. And I was like, why? And she's like, ask him about the experiment. And so that's why we're here today, is because I want to talk more with you for our community and our listeners to know everything about this, quote, experiment that I found out when we talked initially. It's not the first time. You've done this a lot. So let's break it down to what is the actual experiment and why you decided to do it.
Yeah, of course. First, thank you for having me. And shout out to Tina for connecting. Tina's such a big support system, I feel like, for her community. So I was actually in the faculty room and she overheard me say what I was going to do. And she couldn't believe it. And I think that's how we got connected through it. But she overheard. I have a great group of students this semester. And one section in particular is really outgoing, really willing, and it's a broad age range. Well, I'll say it's 18 to 25, 26. So people who are living on their own for the first time, people who have gotten their degrees in undergrad, but in very different things. I have someone in that class has their undergrad in Greek. So it's a wide variety of very new actors and older, more experienced.
And can we pause for a quick second? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but for those listening who don't know, what course is this? What class are you referring to? Like, what do you teach?
So I'm the head of voice and speech for the Acting for Film program. And I also am the head of acting for the musical theater program. But all of the voice and speech classes at the school kind of go under my wing. And this is a voice and speech 2 class. That I'm talking about with this group. And voice and speech 1 is they learn exercises to warm up their voice and connect their voice and their body. And then voice and speech 2 is taking all of that and applying it to scene work, text work, poetry.
Okay.
And the first half of the semester, the students choose monologues.
Okay.
They bring in their own monologues and we work on them. And I coach them one-on-one. And while I'm coaching one person, everybody's kind of observing and taking notes, hopefully.
That's just like a voiceover workshop. That's exactly the same thing that happens when we do voiceover workshops. So this is great. I'm glad that we laid the context down. Okay, so your class is mainly 18 to 26. All right, keep going.
Yeah, wide variety of experience. And it's pretty divided evenly with those identifying as male and female.
Okay.
And the first day of class of the semester, I walk in and I say, come into a circle. And it's very divided. The women are on one side, the men are on the other. And I found it, just happenstance this time. And then it kept happening over and over. And I start to notice more and more as I get to know them that the men really are a very strong presence in this class. And not that that's unusual, but in an acting school where we're going into a lot of emotion and depths and connection, often it's actually the opposite. And so at first I was just really excited that I have this really great willing group of men. And then I start to notice that the women aren't really talking. When I address them, when they have a question, uh, when I give them a note, they acknowledge it, but they weren't really engaging as much as the men. And what I ended up doing as an experiment was, well, not an experiment in this group, but an experiment nonetheless, was I gave them a week notice and I said, next week, men, you aren't going to be talking the entire class. And Christy, I don't think I said this when we first talked. It's a 2-hour and 40-minute class.
And they aren't allowed to say a word?
And I was like, do not speak. And then I talked a little bit about it before, I said, this is why. I'm wondering if it's not only your willingness and eagerness to work and all of that, which I really appreciate and I love. I mean, what teacher doesn't want their students to want to be there? But that it was outshadowing the women in the room.
And how did that land with them? Like, what was their response when you explained, next week we're going to do this and here's why?
Well, and most of my work, all of my work, my voice work is all breath-based. And so I just felt the entire room hold their breath. Because it's confusion. It's a voice and speech teacher telling us not to speak. Then I went and I said, I've been noticing, one, that you physically are separating yourselves as we work. As I work with one person, it's still, even sitting watching, the men are on one side, the women are on another. And this is like very general. I mean, there might be one guy, but it's for the most part pretty separate. And then I brought up, but also speaking directly to the women, I've noticed that you aren't speaking. And I can see you paying attention, wanting to get up and work, but not.
Wow.
And so I want to do this experiment, which I've done, I've been teaching at New York Film Academy since 2014. I've never done this at Film Academy.
This is not something new that you've done, right?
I've done it twice at other schools, at 2 other schools actually. And this group is probably the youngest group I've done it for. And the men, I think right away knew why. Which was, I mean, they are, for being so willing, they're a very astute group. So they knew right away, maybe we're taking up, 85 to 90% of the energy in the room. Yeah, I'd say 85. Yeah. So I think when I said it, the men actually immediately recognized the why. I think it actually shocked the women more that perhaps this is me not speaking for them, but with my years of experience, a male teacher is calling on the women to take up more space and not forcing them to, inviting them to, I think is really important. Um, it's that horrible thing of, this is what I'm not doing. I'm not telling them to smile. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that.
It's the total opposite of what they hear from most men.
And it is an invitation to be in the room with me more. And once we chatted, it was like, okay, I'll see you next week. I think everyone was on the same page. The next week, I start every class with, hey, what have you watched this week? What movies, what TV shows, what theater, what have you seen? They're not allowed to talk about like YouTube shorts or like TikTok. They're not allowed to, it has to be longer form than that. And right away I can see some of the men be like, ugh. But they remembered. And the women took up that space. It took a moment, but there are 2 or 3 who always kind of want more. They stepped up, and that was an invitation for the rest of the class for the women in the rest of the class to also step up to, oh, I can actually say what I watched this week.
And what you just said right there, I think, is a powerful statement about the example of when one woman does it, another woman joins, and another woman joins, and collectively they have more power and they have more comfort. They're more comfortable in using their voice.
Yeah. I also think it is, I this is the first semester I've had them. I've had them now for, I think this is now our 10th week that we're in right now. So I've only known them for 10 classes. And for them to get me, a male, when last semester they did have a woman as a voice and speech teacher, but a man who is very comfortable with who he is, or at least I say I am. Um, but I think it's very much an odd or out of place thing to think of a man as an ally to women. And I think we think of ally in terms of uh, race. I think we think of it as for people of color, for LGBTQ, but I don't hear the word ally for men supporting women. And I need to be that. Like I need to be that. And I think that is coming from my own training. All of my voice and speech teachers, when I talked, I think I counted around like 10 or so teachers who were involved with my education when I was in school, but then also my training as a teacher. Out of those 10, only one of them was a man. And so I have such a deep, profound respect for voice work when it comes to women, that I, as a teacher, have to impart that on my students.
So this class is almost 3 hours long.
Yeah.
And at first the men were like, oh, I got to keep my mouth shut. And then the women, the typical, 1 or 2 started to speak up, and then they all started to speak up. So what happened throughout the class? Like what?
So when we go on into, so they warm up. And the men are allowed to warm up. All right. It's not like they don't have to be mute. They're warming up, they're doing the exercises. And in this semester, because they've learned to warm up, I just say, off you go into the room. Think more like a dance studio. And there are no desks or chairs, or the chairs are around the sides. And they warm up. I walk around and I adjust people. And I do that for all the students. All right. And then we go on to text work. So everybody sits, and then one at a time they come up and I work with them, and the men are not allowed to participate in this way. Their participation is opening up and giving space and giving focus to the women in the room. So I knew right away who the first student would be to come in, or to come up and volunteer. And she was very taken back by the energy in the room. Because often when someone gets up, there's a little like, yeah, go get them. And it's the guys kind of being not in a negative way, but broy, like very supportive. But with them not speaking, the focus is let's focus in and work. Not that it isn't about work before, but there's a calmness. There was a calmness. And without me even saying it, because it's one of my most common things I say, is use the space. So they're allowed to walk around, they're allowed to move. I don't have to say it. She just starts speaking and moves. She walks around the entire room. She stops when she wants to stop. There's a moment where she sits on the floor. She comes up. She takes up the entire dance studio. And at the end, I don't ask for feedback normally, but today my specific feedback, or my question rather, is what did you see? What did you notice? They're not allowed to comment on what they liked or didn't like or anything like that. It has to be what did you see? And the other women said breath, groundedness, openness. And then I said playfulness. And that was the first person. And slowly every woman got up to work. And I have a philosophy. This has been now 3 years, almost 4 years. I don't call on anybody. So when a student wants to get up and work, they work. And if no one gets up, we just sit and we wait. Because I'm the teacher, but it's not my responsibility to learn. It's my responsibility to teach. So if they don't get up to learn, that's a learning moment in itself.
And so what happened after every woman, got up, did their thing? Did you find that as the 3 hours went along that there was a different pace and energy in the room? Did you notice any more camaraderie between the women, as normally the locker room cheer each other on is with the boys or the men?
Yeah. First, obviously it's an acting school, so no cell phones. But every class, you'll have to do a little, hey, put your phone away, just once or twice. They know not to do it really with me, but I still have to do it once or twice. I didn't have to do it at all with anybody. And I thought, and I even prepared for, well, the men aren't working today. They might get distracted. They might, go off and look around. They were super focused. They, in a weird way, they understood the assignment. No, I didn't have to comment on phones. I didn't have to comment on when I'm speaking directly to the student who's working. I didn't ever have to say, hey, everyone, focus. Never. So in terms of the women in the room, there was a super tight-knit support of I didn't have to call on anybody. It was, Peter is so present with us, and she went first, and therefore I just need to go. There was a desire to be seen and to be heard, I think is really important as well. So the women were very, I want to go now. And there were multiple times where multiple women would get up at the same time to work next.
And what do you think I know this isn't the first time you've done it. I know that we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But, for me, listening to you talk about this shift in the attitude and physical behaviors of the women, this idea of not being heard or seen, or having permission to be heard and seen. What do you think? And I know you can't speak to the female professors that they've had in their past. And you said it's predominantly a female industry and that you're one of the few men who teach, and all of your teachers were mostly women.
Yeah.
What does this result say to you about the opportunity men have when either in a conference room with women as the minority, whether it be as you're a teacher in a teaching position, or just even in casual situations? What does this result say to you?
So much relies on wanting to be seen and wanting to be heard. And where does that start to disappear in our lives? When was the first time we were like, I want to be a wallflower? And through this experience and bringing it out into whether it be the acting world or the business world, because I also coach in that world as well, public speaking world, I find that it has a lot to do with I deserve to be in the room. I deserve to take up this space. And that if someone is talking as I'm talking, maybe I don't need to stop. Maybe if someone is interrupting or talking at the same time as me, I don't have to stop talking. And I mentioned this last time we spoke. I have a very good friend, a former colleague of Tina and mine, who we are very similar people. And she and we actually just did this morning on the phone. We were talking at the same time and neither of us gave up. And it's not in any disrespect. It's actually that we're saying the exact same thing at the exact same time in different words, and we just want it there. And it's not out of disrespect, though I have to admit that, of course, sometimes it absolutely is out of disrespect. Not with me and my friend, but in other situations, oftentimes in a boardroom, oftentimes sometimes in an acting class.
In relationships.
In relationships in general, not just romantic, but
Any.
I love the idea of it. It used to be that I would start class about you have to want to speak. I think it's more to do with you have to want to be heard. Planting that seed, just planting that seed. And I don't want to come off as a guru. I don't want to come off as the savior man. I have no desire for that at all. But no, but I don't know how often that is told to young people, that you have to want to be heard. And in that case, I'll say for both men and women. But I'll push it more for the women. That how many times has someone that they look up to, that they think is an authority figure, though I really hate when, like, the moment a student calls me Mr. or Professor, I'm like, that sounds awful. When does a person of authority or a person that you look up to say, you have to want to be heard, you have to want to speak? And I think that's the importance of the work I do, that I maybe for the first time in some of their lives, I'm that person that says that. Now, I'll say by the end of class, it felt like a different class. I think the men in the room were taken aback from the power of the women.
How so?
I think their assumption was they've spent every class together since September. So I think they thought we have each other figured out.
Oh.
And then I do this exercise, and then all of a sudden the women are opening up more. and moving through the space. And I allowed the men to speak in the last 5 minutes, which was, what did you see?
And what did they say? What did they say?
One of the best things was they spoke about one of the male students specifically said, I didn't know she could move like that. And he referred to her walk.
Mm.
And the walk was different than what he thought her movement was. It wasn't about her body. It was about the movement, which was so astute and so specific. It was great. And one of them also spoke about being raised in a certain way to treat women a certain way.
Ooh.
And this was a realization in the moment, which I was like, whoo, go talk to your therapist about that. And he actually said, I think I was taught not to ignore, but to acknowledge and move on. And I said,
well,
what an amazing discovery for your acting. Not only for you as a human, which obviously that's what he was talking about, but notice if you're bringing that habit into your acting. Notice if you're doing that with your scene partner, if they're a woman, that you're actually not with them. I mean, they are a very emotionally adept group. I'll say, like, it's not, the men are not a fraternity. It's not locker room talk. It's very on point in the other classes. This was just a moment of sincerity that I hadn't seen in them before.
And so now that has, how many classes have happened since that experiment?
2.
And have you noticed any differences in the classes before and after the experiment? So after the experiment.
After the experiment, so far, the women have participated more.
Yes, good.
They just, 2 weeks, last week. So the first class afterwards, it was their midterm. So they all do a warm-up and they all do their monologues one at a time. Maybe I give them a couple notes and they do it again. And the first person to get up to do their midterm was a woman.
All right.
And it wasn't every other. It wasn't, one woman went, then all the men went. It had been before men went up to volunteer. Now it was very dispersed. Still sitting on opposite sides. We're working on that. And then the next class, so last week, I showed them a documentary on the dancer choreographer Twyla Tharp, who is very experimental. She started out in the 60s, and it's a documentary that mixes her history of her life and her art with a project that she was working on Zoom during lockdown. And it's really about her whole creative process. And afterwards, it's over. It's an hour and a half. So we have plenty of time to do some work and feedback after. And the women in the room see a woman who started her career really in the 60s and has continual success today. I mean, I believe Twyla is 84 now, still working with people like Misty Copeland, like still working at the top of her game. So having the women in the room see this woman who has been working for decades and talks about working with men and talks about choreographing for male dancers who don't want to be choreographed by a woman. I think it was just a great way of saying the struggle has been going on. That wasn't the reason why I showed it, but that's one of the comments I got in feedback. The majority of it was from the women, her creative process, her experimentation, her unrelenting need to keep going. And then the men also, similar, the creative process, the free flow. It actually felt like their feedback was actually more in line with one another.
Interesting.
And that's exciting.
So let's talk about, we talked about the actual experiment, what was before and after. Let's talk about what you did with this most recent experiment compared to the others that you did. Did you see similarities in the results?
The last time I did it was probably, 7 years ago.
Oh, okay.
And I was 7 years younger and less sure of myself. So I gave them a week warning of next week, this will happen. It was different because I had bigger age range, much bigger. And I'm talking almost like 45 years between the oldest and the youngest. And the younger men in that group would speak every once in a while. And not that I would shut them down, but I would really try to focus in on the person I was working on. It was very similar in structure of warm up and then work one-on-one. I think me at that time being less sure of myself, experimenting still, being a little nervous of what if the men talk to my boss about this?
Okay.
I had moments of being worried about of that, even though I very much explained like this isn't, I use the word, it's an experiment for all of us. And maybe it was because of where I was in my life that I still felt the women in the room nervous to get up and work. So as my confidence and my availability in my soul, in my experience grew, I think that allowed or invited more of this to work. So years ago, I just don't think I don't know if I was ready for that experiment, even though I thought of it. Yeah.
And I remember you told me that you had an older gentleman who was kind of pushing back on this.
Older gentleman, and I'll be very upfront, a man of color. And I am a white man, and I completely acknowledged what I was doing in the room. And he actually took no offense in that. Like, we were very much in that conversation of, I know what I'm doing. He was like, I can see that you are nervous about that. He said that in class. He was very astute. He was a retired lawyer who just came in and was doing a 2-year program. This is at another school, not NIFA. And after retirement, wanted to look into acting, which is, great.
Yes.
And he was very willing. Pushed back on the exercise as, well, I'm of a certain age and I'm of a certain time. And my response was, but there's always more to learn.
Interesting. Very interesting. And I think too, that idea of, look, I didn't grow up this way.
Yeah.
This is not how I was brought up to do things. So boo-hoo on you. This is who I am, right?
Yeah.
This is who I am.
Yeah.
And that will always exist. Always.
Yes.
There will always be a generation of people who will not see what the generation after them or generations after them consider to be the norm.
Right. And I'm very lucky in my training that when I was getting certified to teach voice from Kristen Linklater, she was in her early 80s. She had just retired a couple years before from Columbia University, and she retired back to her hometown in Scotland. And I was training with her there, and I remember her saying, talking about herself learning every day, that she is learning every day from her students, from her teachers, from her coworkers, her colleagues. But then she said, you are of a different generation and you will be teaching a generation that I will never have taught. You will have to deal with things that I will never have had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And she made reference to, intimacy coordinators. She made reference to gender politics. She made reference to, this was right before Black Lives Matter. She was making a political statement of, I know where I am in my life. You're going to have to deal with other things that I hadn't. Or have to deal with them in a different way. So when she said that, and then I was talking to this older gentleman who at the time was 25 years older than me. And I'm telling him,
this is what we're going to do.
This is what we're going to play with.
Right.
That I ended up using, and I remember this, I think I even used the word, can we turn this into a little bit of a game? Can we play? And I think that lured him over a little bit more. Yeah, it did. I remember it. Play instead of this is a rule. And I don't use the word rule. It's not a rule. We're doing theater. It's about play.
And so now that you've conducted this experiment, 2 or 3 times, 3 times now, with different age groups, different schools.
Yeah.
I kind of want to end on this note of, Peter, you are an example of what someone can do to make micro changes that can lead to big changes later. Because I firmly believe that when people are in a position to do something and they choose to do something like this experiment, only 3 hours out of someone's life, right? Yeah. 3 hours. That is going to last with those students well into the rest of their lives, at the next job, at the next casting, at the next happy hour, at the next relationship, because they're going to remember it. And so this tiny bit of time has such an impact. So what can other men do in their lives to be a little bit more like Peter? I say that playfully.
Yes. Yeah. This relates to the classes I teach and the preconceived notions of what voice and speech is in general. That it is about learning accents or learning the correct way to speak. And really the correct way to speak is connecting to yourself and speaking from who you are. So when I'm teaching, it is about inviting more of my students into the room, more of themselves into the room. So then taking that aspect of voice and speech into the world, and how can more men do that, is remember that the voice is so much more than what we sound like. It is every bit of communication we put out into the world. It is, how do you cross your arms? How do you slump over? How do you take up space on the New York City subway versus allowing more people to take up space with you? I think there's just a certain level of awareness that needs to happen on a daily basis. It's not that you need to be aware of your surroundings in every second of the day of my foot is here, but maybe it's a couple times a day where you check in of, oh, how is my physical behavior or vocal behavior affecting the world around me? How does me talking at the same time as someone diminish them? How does talking at the same time and then realizing it and letting that, please go for it, go invite them to speak, how that actually is an invitation to take up more room.
Peter, what does your door to success look like? And I want you to be as specific as possible. So for example, my door is all kinds of bedazzled. I love my door is all gemmed out. It is bright. You can see it from space. And when I open it, I see and I feel amazed at the amount of camaraderie and equality that exists. There are little girls playing with little boys, and they're playing sports that maybe other people would consider to be male dominated, and they're all getting along. I see women and men in conference rooms. I see women in positions of leadership and leading teams of men. That's what my door to success looks like. What does your door to success look like when you walk up to it, describe it, and then what happens when you walk through?
My door to success looks like mountains with trees on it and a lake. And the lake is sparkling, like you could really see the sun sparkling on that water, like just glistening. And there is a sound attached to it. Maybe it's because I grew up on a lake, so I can also hear a boat engine driving across the lake, but I hear that very specifically. When I open it, I see all the teachers that have made me who I am. I see Kristen Linklater, who, rest her soul, passed away 6 years ago. Very, very much there. And the wisdom she imparted on me. And then I'll say, I have, in the last 7 or 8 years, had some amazing women in my life who have all been my bosses. And that they've actually given me permission to experiment and to play and to break some rules. And that's the beginning. And then right past that is a studio space filled with every walk of life person possible, playing together, equality, equity, all of it, diversity, all of it in the same room. And I think it's really important to remember the word play and being together. We're playing together. We're creating together. Yeah. I hear so many different sounds. I hear so many different languages also, and accents. Yeah, there's playfulness, togetherness, willingness.
It sounds like a beautiful door. I'd want to walk through it, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I would like to say thank you so much, Peter, for joining us on the Building Doors podcast. I know I learned a lot from you, and I think our listeners and our community will also. Thank you for listening to the Building Doors podcast. I'm your host, Christy Harst. And if you liked what you heard, buy us a cup of coffee. Let us know. Go to buymeacoffee.com/buildingdoors and donate to the podcast. We'd love to have a frothy latte. Until next time, let's build some doors. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Building Doors podcast. Want to hear more? Check out all our episodes at buildingdoorsvo.com/podcast and follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Building Doors VO. We'd love to hear from you, so call us on our 24/7 hotline at 216-307-1917 and leave us a voicemail with your thoughts. Do you want to support the podcast? Well, we love coffee. Buy us a cup through the link in the description or at buildingdoorsvo.com. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep speaking up, and let's keep building doors together.